Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terra One Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And you know, when we get these weather events we're having to deal with and find out what to do and how to do it, the best way to find out what's happening in your local area is to talk to the people that represent you. Best way to find out anything in Lafourche? Ask Archie Chesson as welcome in. Parish President, Lafourche Parish, Archie Chesson. Archie, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate
Thank you, Keith. Always a pleasure being on with you.
Thank you, my friend. And so, listen, one of those things is where we see all of these issues with this cold weather and this freezing weather and the water issues. Kind of give us an update of where things stand. I think things are going quite well in Lafourche.
Yeah, things are going really well, Keith. And I just got off of a conference call with county officials from across the country talking about some environmental stuff. And I made the joke that you tell a Cajun what to do with a hurricane, we know exactly what to do, right? We run to the corner store, pick up six-pack of beer and some Vienna sausage, and we wait it out. We don't do cold weather very well. We're not used to that here, but fortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of issues at all through this entire event. We spent Monday night late putting out some de-icer on some of our bridges and dealing with some of the mechanical functions as things kind of froze up on the bridges. With that little bit of precipitation that fell, early yesterday morning. And then when the temperatures plummeted, it caused a few mechanical issues for us, but nothing that we couldn't fix when things warmed up as the day went on yesterday. And luckily, as strong as the wind was and as brutally cold as it was, it really helped us out. We didn't have a whole lot of cloud cover, so that water, the leftover stuff that was on some of the bridges, kind of melted and blew off and dried up. So we just had a really cold night. And luckily, people running their faucets and trying to keep things moving didn't have a whole lot of busted pipe issues we haven't seen in talking with the great folks over at Lafourche Parish Water District number 1, Wayne and his team. Not a whole lot of issues to report, if any. We haven't lost a whole lot of pressure, haven't had any boil water advisories. They're going to keep an eye on that because as things get that cold and then the pipes begin to thaw, sometimes you'll see some breaks. Right. And some of the bigger main lines as those sort of changes happens to the pipe, especially in some of the older places where we may still have some of those metal pipes and not so much the plastic stuff. But overall, really well. No issues overnight with any of the bridges. Nothing really freezing up, nothing getting slick again because the wind blew and dried up a lot of that stuff. So we've been really lucky. We're out of that freezing temperature range. So if you were kind of letting that water drip in your pipes, now's the time you can shut it off. We're going to stay above freezing tonight, so there's no need to really do that. But still continue to kind of check on your pets and your plants and those people. It's still going to be kind of cold tonight. It'll be I think in that upper 30 range. So for a lot of us, it's still really cold. It's not something we want to be out in, but nothing that we have to worry about, running water and things like that. And very luckily, we had a warming shelter up and running the last couple of days, but didn't have anyone show up, which is, I guess, is a good thing.
Outstanding.
That people were comfortable enough with family or friends or in their own homes that they didn't have to seek that sort of shelter. So things overall went really well. And I think now that we're out of that freezing component, we're kind of on the upswing, knowing that we're going to see another, dip in the temperatures this weekend, according to the Weather Service. So we'll deal with, like normal, whatever comes our way.
Well, and again, excellent to be able to report that. The other thing that's really good is that, you had opportunity there for anybody that maybe had electrical issues, and doesn't sound like we had many of those. We had Energy come on telling us a little bit about how we can have these outages and they can come up very quickly. Didn't seem like Lafourche had to deal with that very much either.
No, real heavy precipitation that caused lines to drop or any really bad, luckily car accidents on the road that maybe took out a pole or a transformer. Right. Or something like that. We were working really good with Energy. Ms. Paula Rome and the team there, reached out ahead of time to make sure that we had the shelter open. So if they, for some reason, did have to shed power, they lost power, they knew where we were to get it back up and running very quickly if we lost power at that facility. So that team is always great. Again, the team at the Water District always does a really good job at making sure water's flowing. I know Superintendent Martin and those guys are working really hard. Going to have school tomorrow. Had a few HVAC issues across some of the schools. Making sure that everybody was going to be warm. So they just said, look, let's take one more day, to make sure everything's working properly and get it back up and running. So that team and the partnerships there and the communication with them are always well. So, our teachers and our kiddos are going to be back at school tomorrow and getting back to that process. Luckily, we didn't have to worry about any hurricane days. So they're on track, I think, as far as school days go. Never thinking we'd need it for a freeze day. But luckily, again, things are selling out and we're going to be back on the uptick.
Yeah, and one of those things also, thinking about the kids, a lot of those people may be wondering, why is it that you need to be able to do that or be out of school? Well, one of those days was going to be able to for education, but the other thing is making sure that the kids don't have to be out in that severe weather. A lot of those kids get picked up pretty early, and when you get 10 or 15 degree weather, it's just kind of difficult for our kids to have to deal with that. Again, like you mentioned, we're ready for a hurricane, we can deal with that. We don't deal with the cold and snow too well.
Yeah, and look, we follow suit with him. As Brooke Huddleston, who's our Head Start director, kind of made the call to cancel school again today as well. Not that we had any huge issues, but you think about those 3, 4 year old children that we have coming. It's not something we want to expose those guys to getting on or off the bus or in and out of mom and dad's car or grandma's car as they get dropped off and picked up. And just because of the issues we're seeing in South Lafourche, we lost our Head Start facility because of the hurricane. So to keep those kids on track, we're busing them to the Lockport facility every day and doing some good things on the bus and keeping education going while they're on that little bus ride a little bit further up the road. But didn't want to expose those kids to that sort of thing. So it just made sense to cancel school in a lot of ways. It still is. I went out for lunch. It still is pretty brutally cold out there.
Right.
As a big guy, if I'm cold, I know those little kids are cold as well. So it worked out really well. And back on track for tomorrow again, like all of our school system said, and all the government operations. And hopefully now that we're above freezing, we see some of those state offices open as well throughout the state. So some of those services return back to our citizens as well.
Yeah, and again, just making sure that everybody's staying safe. The other thing that's so very valuable, and you mentioned it rather cavalier, but the great communication with all of those different program heads, department heads about making those decisions, talking with Jared, talking with Paula, making sure that we're kind of communicating in the right way. It just makes for everything going so much more smoothly.
Absolutely, Keith. And I think it's one of the things that we figured out how to do really well, through COVID and the hurricanes and these little freezes that pop up and all the little incidental stuff. But we have a really good team that's all focused across the elected and the business world these days, and even across Parish. I talked to President Bergeron the last couple of days as well, trying to coordinate efforts. If you need anything, hey, we're here. If you need anything, we're here. So just a working relationship with a group of officials we have, I think, across the Bayou region. You're seeing pay dividends in incidents like this where the lines of communication are open. We're not fighting about stuff. We're not worried about who gets the credit. We're just doing what we're doing.
Yep. Archie, we appreciate it so much. We'll take a break, and we appreciate your time. And that'll do it for this particular segment here on Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A lot more after this break.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. Alford and Associates, for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality. Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And very often we'll have some of these special sessions where our local government and politics go into session. And maybe sometimes we do or don't necessarily understand all of that. We're really glad to have people who are in leadership positions that can help us understand those things as we welcome back to the program our Lafourche Parish President, Archie Chasson. Archie, good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Keith. Good to see you as well.
We appreciate it. And so this special session, they go in and they look at some different things. And, we've been talking about this redistricting for some time. And we've got some suggestions coming out that seem a little off. Is that a nice way to say that?
Yeah, it's a little weird, Keith. We got into this whole mess last year when all of us had to redistrict because of the census changes.
Right.
They left kind of things the same. As population shifted, a little things had to come and go and grow and shrink. But for the majority of congressional districts stayed the same. And then, of course, there were some lawsuits, went to court. And the federal judge basically said, look, legislature and governor, you have to redraw this. We've seen some population swings and where the minority population is and how it's set up. So we want to see a new set of maps. Not really saying you need to draw it, but we highly suggest that you figure that out and add a second, minority majority district. So we've seen a lot of proposals. Governor Landry took office, I guess a little over a week ago.
Right.
A lot of us were in Baton Rouge to watch that happen. And then immediately called the legislature into session this week to try to figure that out. Because if you don't do it, then the court has said we're going to do it, and you may not be happy with what you end up with. So,
Right.
There are a ton of proposals floating out there by several state reps and several state senators. I think the governor has blessed the one that he wants to see go through, which kind of shifts around Congressman Graves' district, and it continues to parse out Lafourche and which is what concerns us. We got parsed out when we lost that 7th congressional district several years ago, and they kind of split Lafourche and Terrebonne around Highway 90. So that upper part is looked at by Congressman Graves, and the southern portion is looked at by Majority Leader Scalise. And it's just a little weird. And I have my own personal feelings about this, but as a parish leader, it just makes it increasingly difficult when things start to get split up and that sort of thing. And we've had a lot of conversations across the parishes with our delegation about how this is going to play out. We've had some conversation. I had a great conversation with Congressman Graves last week about what he thought was going to happen, how that's going to affect him. And I think Speaker Johnson made a comment in an article today about how kind of a couple of these maps threaten not only the Republican majority in the U.S. House, but look, we have a speaker from Louisiana, which has never happened before.
Right.
We have a majority leader from Louisiana, and I think if Congressman Graves' dream comes true, and we see some shifts in committee leadership, he may be the next chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, which has never happened in Louisiana's history, and has jurisdiction over things like the Corps and US DOTD, and can really pay dividends for some of the infrastructure needs we have, not only in the Bayou region, but across the state. So having those 3 top leadership positions maybe change around and flip around, you lose a congressional Republican seat, a couple of other ones lose. Well, now we're looking at, Mike Johnson not being the speaker anymore, which, for us is a big deal. It can move legislation like the RISE Act and the BREEZE Act, help us with Mesa revenue. They don't do, earmarks that much anymore, but there's still some federal dollars that flow through that they have control over. But It also helps us in a post-hurricane world with helping to move FEMA. FEMA listens to the Speaker of the House a whole lot better than they do the parish president from Lafourche, right? So having those abilities to see that is a little weird. And then we look at the maps for the 9 justices, the 7 justices of the Supreme Court, and adding some justices, redrawing those lines, again, splitting up Lafourche and what that looks like. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the closed primaries, and do we go back to that situation? And there's a delicate balance of, do we do that just for the federal and the state level, or are you going to include locals in that? I will tell you personally, I don't think we ought to have the locals in there. It creates a whole lot of confusion for, I think, the voters as we try to elect everybody from a parish president to a constable to, some of our municipal leaders in our 3 municipalities. So, there's a competing faction. There's some folks that want to have just the higher position statewide, legislature, federal delegation, and leave the locals out. There's some folks that want to put the locals in. So, we're going to continue to deal with that over the next week. I think they have until, Monday or Tuesday till the special session ends. And then a lot of them want to get out of there because a lot of us are traveling to DC next week for what we know as Washington Mardi Gras. But, it's a valuable time for us to meet with our federal delegation, have meetings with FEMA and other stakeholders during the day, and then do those networking things at night. But I'm sure a lot of those guys want to get up there as well. So it's just a little bit of a weird time, but we deal with this every 10 years anyway. So we got through it last year with all of our local stuff and redistricting as well. So I fully believe in our delegation and in the governor that we're going to see the right things done for not only our area but the people of Louisiana. And we'll just have to sit back and watch and make our voices heard if we have to.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to that really good communication. We talk about it all the time, being able to open our discussions up and make sure that we're talking about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And again, like you said, trusting the people who are in that delegation to be able to look at those decisions and see where that map needs to be and make the recommendations so that somebody else isn't deciding that it comes from, the people whom it's going to affect is the right way to do that. And so we appreciate that. Very, very much, Archie. Always appreciate your education for us when it comes to these matters. And thanks for taking care of everything. We'll get back in touch with you soon.
Thanks, Keith. Good to see you guys.
All right. Thank you, my friend. All right, guys. Again, that's Archie Chesson, the Lafourche Parish president. And that will do it for us here for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. Let more Bayou time right after this break.